Assalamu alaikum, dear brother and sister. O Adam, shall I not point you to the tree of eternity and a kingdom that never withers? These words, resonating with divine wisdom, were uttered by Allah when He addressed the first human, Adam. They echo through the centuries, their meaning profound and layered with both a promise and a warning. The story of Adam, his fall from grace, and the eternal promise from Allah to humanity is foundational to the understanding of the entire journey of mankind, culminating in the arrival of Prophet Muhammad and the final revelation of the Quran. In the beginning, Allah created Adam from clay, breathing into him His spirit. He was the first human, the first of a long line of prophets and messengers. Allah placed Adam in paradise, a garden filled with unimaginable beauty and peace. But within this perfect realm, a single command stood. Adam and his wife Hawa, Eve, were forbidden from approaching a particular tree. The tree in question, referred to in the Quran as the tree of eternity, was symbolic of the eternal life that was offered to Adam. It was not merely a tree, but a test. The temptation of the tree would lead Adam to face a choice: obedience to the divine command, or the allure of eternity, a kingdom of never-ending pleasure and riches, the very thing Allah had promised to the righteous. Allah's question to Adam, "Shall I not point you to the tree of eternity and a kingdom that never withers?" speaks to the dual nature of human desire, the innate longing for eternal happiness, and the challenge of choosing the right path to attain it. The promise of a kingdom that would never decay and a tree that offered eternal life seemed too tempting for Adam to resist. Despite the divine warning, he and Hawa approached the tree and partook of its fruit. This act of disobedience, the fall from paradise, was the first moment of human error. It was not a failure of the divine plan, but a part of it. For Allah, in His infinite wisdom, had foreseen this moment. The story of Adam is one of human choice, the exercise of free will, and the resulting consequences. Upon tasting the fruit, Adam and Hawa realized their nakedness, and in their newfound awareness, they sought forgiveness from Allah. Allah's response was a lesson for humanity. He forgave Adam, but He also decreed that he and his descendants would live upon the earth, facing trials and tests as they worked to return to the paradise from which they had been exiled. Thus, the story of mankind was set in motion, a journey from heaven to earth and, through guidance, back to heaven. The phrase, tree of eternity, also held a deeper meaning. It was not a literal tree that Adam sought, but the pursuit of divine knowledge and immortality through the rejection of Allah's commandments. It symbolized a path that, though alluring, led to a greater loss, the loss of innocence and the forfeiture of paradise. The tree represented the danger of following desires over divine guidance. The narrative of Adam and Eve is the first chapter in a much broader divine story, one that would span millennia. As time passed, the descendants of Adam spread across the earth, and with them, the messages of the prophets sent by Allah to guide humanity. Each prophet was sent to a specific people at a particular time, but their core message remained the same: the oneness of God and the importance of following His commands. These prophets, though distinct in their circumstances, all shared a common mission: to bring humanity back to the straight path. Among the great prophets who followed Adam were Noah, Abraham, Moses, David, and Jesus, each of whom played a pivotal role in shaping the course of history. The Kaaba, built by Prophet Abraham and his son Ismail, stood as a physical reminder of the divine guidance sent to these prophets. But as time passed, the message of monotheism was distorted and idol worship took root. The Kaaba, originally built as a sanctuary for the worship of the one true God, became a center of idol worship, a symbol of humanity's forgetfulness of the divine. By the time of Prophet Muhammad, Mecca had become a city defined by idol worship, with the Kaaba itself housing hundreds of idols. Yet the divine promise remained intact, and the path of guidance was to be revealed once more. Muhammad was born into this world at a time when the need for a final revelation had never been greater. He would be the culmination of a lineage of prophets, a lineage that began with Adam and passed through Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. It was not by chance that the Kaaba stood at the center of the prophetic story. The Kaaba, though initially constructed by the great prophet Abraham and his son Ismail, had remained a symbol of the divine message throughout the centuries, awaiting the return of true worship to its original form. Mecca, the birthplace of Muhammad, would once again become the focal point of divine guidance for the whole world. The advent of Muhammad was a fulfillment of the promises made to Adam and the generations that followed. Just as the tree of eternity had symbolized the eternal life that Adam lost, the final revelation of the Quran would offer humanity the true path to eternal life, not through disobedience, but through submission to the will of Allah. Muhammad was not just another prophet, but the seal of the prophets, bringing with him the final message that would guide humanity for all time. The miracle of the Quran, its preservation, and its comprehensive guidance are reminders of the eternal promise Allah made to Adam. The story of Adam's fall and the promise of redemption through his descendants were not isolated events in history, but part of a continuous divine plan. The kingdom that never withers, the eternal paradise that Adam was promised, was now within reach once more through the guidance of the Quran and the final prophet Muhammad. Thus, The phrase, "O Adam, shall I not point you to the tree of eternity and a kingdom that never withers," takes on layers of meaning in the context of the entire narrative. It speaks to the human condition, the desire for immortality, the temptation of worldly things, and the eternal pursuit of truth and divine guidance. It is a call to humanity, echoing through the generations, from the time of Adam to the time of Muhammad, a call to return to the path that leads to eternal life, to the kingdom of Allah that never withers. The story of Adam, his fall, and the promise of eternal life set the stage for the final chapter of human history, the coming of Prophet Muhammad, the last of the great prophets, who would point humanity toward the true tree of eternity, one rooted in submission to the one true God, Allah. In the arid heart of the Arabian Peninsula, amidst rocky deserts and shifting dunes, there stood a city unlike any other, Mecca. Though small in size compared to the empires of Rome and Persia, Mecca bore a legacy far greater than its geography might suggest. At its center stood the Kaaba, the ancient sanctuary believed to have been raised by Prophet Abraham and his son Ishmael, upon the very foundations laid by Prophet Adam himself. Clothed in a veil of mystery and veneration, the Kaaba had become a sacred destination for the tribes of Arabia. But centuries had passed since the days of Abraham. His monotheistic message had gradually been eroded by tribal customs and pagan traditions. By the 6th century, the Kaaba had been surrounded by 360 idols, each tribe placing their carved deities around or inside its walls. Still, even in this age of idol worship, the Kaaba retained an aura of sanctity. Every year, thousands would traverse the harsh desert, bringing offerings, trade goods, and prayers to Mecca, binding the Arabian Peninsula through faith and commerce alike. However, this central role Mecca played did not go unnoticed, nor unchallenged. Far to the south, in Yemen, ruled a Christian viceroy named Abraha al-Ashram. He governed on behalf of the Aksumite Empire of Abyssinia, a powerful Christian kingdom based in what is now Ethiopia. Abraha, proud and ambitious, saw in Mecca both a spiritual rival and a political threat. The flow of pilgrims to Mecca gave the Quraysh tribe both wealth and influence, something Abraha wished to redirect to himself. To achieve this, Abraha commissioned the construction of a grand cathedral in the Yemeni capital of Sana'a. This was no ordinary place of worship. Its walls shimmered with imported marble, its ceilings adorned with golden ornaments. He named it Alkales, after the Greek ekklesia, meaning church. Abraha declared that this cathedral would be the new spiritual heart of Arabia, one to eclipse Mecca and draw the pilgrims south. But the Arabs did not heed his call. Despite its splendor, Alkales stood mostly empty. The tribes continued to make their way north to Mecca, to the Kaaba, as they had done for generations. Frustrated and enraged by this rejection, Abraha resolved to destroy the Kaaba once and for all. With imperial support and his own fiery resolve, Abraha assembled a mighty army. This force, said to number over 60,000 men, was equipped with armor, steel weapons, and most remarkably, were elephants imported from Africa and India. These enormous beasts, unknown to the Arabian terrain, struck terror into all who saw them. The most famous among them was named Mahmud, a towering elephant chosen to lead the march. As this fearsome army began its trek northward, it left devastation in its wake. Several Arabian tribes attempted resistance, but none could stand against the might of the elephants and seasoned soldiers. Word spread quickly throughout the desert. Abraha was coming for the Kaaba. In Mecca, panic swept through the city. The Quraysh were traders, not warriors. They had no standing army to repel such a threat. Abdul Muttalib, the wise and respected chief of the Quraysh and grandfather of the yet unborn Muhammad, called upon the people to evacuate. His faith remained unshaken. The Kaaba, he declared, has a Lord who shall protect it. As the Meccans climbed the surrounding hills and took refuge in caves and valleys, Abraha's army advanced toward the city with confidence, unaware that divine events were about to unfold. When the army reached the outskirts of Mecca, something strange occurred. Mahmud, the lead elephant, knelt down and refused to move. His handlers struck him, yelled at him, tried to pull him forward, but he would not rise. They turned him to the north, he moved. To the east, he moved. To the west, he moved. But the moment they turned him toward the Kaaba again, he collapsed to the ground and resisted with all his might. Confusion rippled through the ranks. Soldiers grew restless. Superstitions whispered among them. And then, as they deliberated their next move, the sky began to change. From the distance came a low, rumbling sound. The air turned electric, tense, as if nature itself had stopped to watch. Suddenly, from the horizon, flocks of birds began to appear, ababil birds, small but swift. They flew in perfect formation, wave after wave darkening the sky. These were no ordinary birds. Each carried in its claws and beak stones of baked clay, tiny but precise weapons ordained by divine command. As they swooped over Abraha's army, they released their stones with supernatural precision. Wherever the stones struck, they left destruction. Soldiers collapsed in agony. Armor crumbled. Skin burned. Chaos overtook the army. Mahmud fled in terror, trampling his own men. The once proud force of 60,000 disintegrated into a screaming, terrified mob. Abraha himself was struck and gravely wounded. His flesh began to rot. Horrified and defeated, he ordered a retreat back to Yemen. But his injuries worsened with every step. His skin peeled, his body decayed. Before he could reach Sana'a, he died in agony, a warning etched in history. This miraculous event was later revealed to the Prophet Muhammad in Surah Al-Fil, a powerful 5-verse chapter of the Quran. Have you not seen how your Lord dealt with the companions of the elephant? Did he not make their plan go astray? And he sent against them birds in flocks, striking them with stones of hard clay, and he made them like eaten straw. These words became immortal in the hearts of believers. The phrase asf makul, eaten straw, referred to the condition of the defeated army, reduced to a lifeless ruin, like dry stalks chewed and spit out. The year of the elephant, 570 AD, would be forever marked by this divine protection. But its significance did not end with Abraha's defeat. That same year, shortly after the dust of the miracle had settled, Muhammad ibn Abdullah was born in Mecca. The grandson of Abdul Muttalib, Muhammad would grow up hearing of the year of the elephants, the miracle that had saved their sacred city. For the Arabs, the year of the elephant became a historical milestone, the year by which all other events were dated. Unbeknownst to the people of Mecca, the child born that year would one day receive revelation, purify the Kaaba, and restore the faith of Abraham. He would bring back the monotheism that the city had lost. And that miracle of divine protection would be seen as the first sign, a silent, majestic herald of the final prophet's arrival. The elephants and horses panicked, their hoofs thundering in frenzy as they crushed the ground beneath and trampled their own soldiers in a frenzied retreat. Chaos erupted, an overwhelming scene almost unparalleled in history. But the nightmare had only begun. As the army reeled in confusion, the second stage of divine punishment unfolded above them. Birds filled the sky, each carrying stones in their beaks and claws. Like ominous heralds, they swooped over the army, showering them with deadly precision. Cries of agony echoed as the soldiers fell under a relentless hail of stone. The once mighty army, 60,000 strong and backed by elephants, was utterly vanquished without a single sword raised against them. Mecca and the Kaaba stood untouched, preserved by a miracle. Soon after, within that very same year, a momentous birth occurred, one destined to reshape history. On a night filled with divine wonder, the Prophet Muhammad was born. Accounts from that night speak of miracles. Amina, his mother, experienced a birth unlike any other, painless, serene, as if gently cradled by the hand of the divine. But the marvels didn't end there. At the moment Muhammad entered the world, the idols within the Kaaba collapsed, seemingly overwhelmed by an unseen power. Far away in Medina, a radiant star appeared, stunning the Jewish community and stirring profound reflection. The wonders extended across distant lands. In Syria, light shone from ancient castles. The sacred fire of Zoroastrianism, which had burned for over 1,000 years, inexplicably extinguished. In Persia's royal court, the palace walls shook and parts of the structure crumbled, as though even kingdoms felt the tremor of divine arrival. At the same time, the mighty Tigris River overflowed its banks, nature itself seemed to tremble in awe. This was not merely the birth of a child. It was a cosmic signal, a spiritual turning point, a herald of a new age. Among the Jews, anticipation had long simmered. Their scriptures foretold a prophet, a redeemer. The signs of that night convinced many that his coming was near. Driven by hope, they launched a search for the awaited child. Shalom alaikum, alaikum shalom. We are gathering details about male births in this region. You're the village midwife, aren't you? Certainly. What do you wish to know? Have you observed anything unusual among the newborns? No, nothing that I can recall. Any of them born with a unique birthmark on their back? No, not that I've seen. Their investigation laid nowhere. The flaw was in their assumption. They searched only among Hebrew infants. They didn't consider that the awaited prophet could be Arab, but he was. Muhammad's ancestry traced back through Ishmael, son of Prophet Abraham, a bloodline that reached all the way to humanity's origin. According to tradition, Adam, the first human and the first prophet, lived for nearly 1,000 years. Together with Eve, he had 125 children who dispersed across the earth. One of his sons, Seth, was chosen by God as a prophet as well. Generations later came Enoch, descended from Seth, also honored with prophethood. Enoch was the 5th generation grandson of Seth and the great-grandfather of Noah, the prophet known for building the ark. Noah had 4 sons, Shem, Ham, Japheth, and Jam. Jam, due to disbelief, was lost to the flood. The rest, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, became the ancestors of the major branches of humanity. Shem's line gave rise to influential civilizations like the Arabs, Phoenicians, Hebrews, and Assyrians. These peoples, speaking Semitic tongues like Akkadian, Aramaic, Arabic, and Hebrew, shaped much of the ancient Middle East. Ham's descendants, called the Hamites, settled in Africa. Though often linguistically Arabized, they were ethnically distinct. North African groups like the Egyptians, while speaking Arabic, trace their roots not to the Arabs but to the Hamites. Japheth, meanwhile, is viewed as the ancestor of the peoples who spread through Europe and Asia, the Indo-European and Asian nations. The line of prophethood continued through Shem, branching over time. Prophets like Hud, Shiloh, Lot, and Shuaib emerged from his descendants. Among them, Prophet Abraham, 6 generations removed from Shem, became a pivotal figure in history, regarded as the father of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Through his 2 sons, Isaac and Ishmael, the prophetic legacy diverged. Many prophets, including Moses and Jesus, descended from Isaac and his son Jacob. Moses, for example, was 5 generations removed from Isaac. King David was 4. After David came Solomon, and generations later, Joachim, Maria's father. Though Joachim wasn't a prophet, he fathered Mary, who gave birth to Jesus. Thus, many revered prophets, including Jesus, descended from Isaac. Yet, Ishmael's line too was destined for greatness. 6 centuries after Jesus, Muhammad, the final prophet, was born in Mecca, descended from Ishmael. Isaac and Ishmael were brothers, sons of Abraham. This made Abraham the shared ancestor of both Jesus and Muhammad. Therefore, from a theological and genealogical standpoint, there's no barrier to recognizing Muhammad as the long-awaited prophet foretold in earlier scriptures, not just for Jews or Christians, but for all humanity.